How many of you, think that property gives you very good cash flow? How many of you don't think so? Okay. Now, Robert Kiyosaki says that if you want to have true financial freedom, you must build cash flow, right? And his definition of asset is very simple but very, very powerful. What is Robert Kiyosaki's definition of asset? His definition is anything that put money in your pocket is asset. Anything that take money out of your pocket is liability. Now, with that in mind, is car an asset or liability? How many of you say liability? Oh, wow, a lot. How many of you say asset? Okay, and the rest of you? How many of you say don't know? Okay, when I was in Indonesia about slightly more than a month ago, I was asking a class, a pretty big class as well. I said, how many of you say car is a liability? Well, almost the whole class raised their hands. I said, how many of you say car is an asset? One young gentleman, teenage boy, seated right at the back of the room, very shy, raised only half a hand. Say like that. I say, why do you say car is an asset? He says, because I rent out my car. So when I rent out my car, does it put money in my pocket? Yeah, it does. So it's not about the car, it's how you use it. True or true? So with that in mind, how many of you say, is children an asset or liability? How many of you say children is an asset? This must be parents. How many of you say children are liability? Again, I leave it to you to decide. I know most people tell me current liability, but you pray and hope very hard. One day they become your asset. True or true? So I leave you to decide for yourself, okay? So, moving forward, how many of you say property is an asset? Woo, quite a lot. How many of you say property is a liability? Wow, only one. And then the rest of us, don't know. I covered all three answers already. So you all must raise hands for one of them. One more time. How many of you say property is an asset? Good. How many of you say property is a liability? How many of you don't know? Good. Now let's be very specific. When we own our first house, most of them, do we stay in the house? Yeah, we stay in the house. So when you stay in the house, is that an asset or liability? Why is that a liability? Yeah, because you owe the bank money, right? So it's a liability, right? Because when you stay in the house, you owe bank money. Does money goes into your pocket? No, it doesn't. But does money goes out of your pocket? Yes, it does. So as long as you stay in the house, your house is a liability. Now, since you stay in the house is a liability. Should you stay in a big house or small house? Yeah, better stay in a small house, right? But Chinese or Asians cannot, right? Face very important. All bank a lot of money, never mind. Must be show big, right? True. Okay, let's go one step further. Some people can tell me, Yang Po, I pay off all my loan already. And because I pay off all my loan, so my house is now an asset. How many of you say when you pay off all your loan now it's an asset? How many of you say you pay off is still a liability? Wow, good. How many of you say don't know? Wow, okay, good. Now let's analyze together. When you fully paid for the loan, does it still put money in your pocket? No, but does it continue to take money out of your pocket? What goes out? Maintenance, property tax, utility, repair, true or true? So, if the house you stay in, although fully paid for, it is still a liability. Why are we in such a hurry to pay off our house? True or true? We are in a hurry to pay off because our parents tell us this. Don't owe the bank money, right? Owing bank money is no good, right? That's why we quickly pay. But it's because you quickly pay. Even after you pay, it is still a liability. So why be in a hurry to pay? In fact, if it's still a liability, slowly pay. True or true? And use the money and go and make money elsewhere. Isn't that better? Yeah, that's the reason why today, despite China, India having the most population, our economy combined can't even compete with US. It's because our parents tell us that don't owe bank money. True or true? But the fact of the matter is this. There's such thing called good debt. There's this thing called bad debt. So when the house you're staying in is a liability, don't be in a hurry to pay. Let's go one step further. Some people can tell me, say, Yang Po, I managed to finally rent out my house. So now my house is an asset. How many of you say when you rent out your house is an asset? How many of you say still liability? How many of you don't know? Okay, now let's analyze together. In fact, when I was in Jakarta about more than a month ago, I met up with a good old friend. Never met for many, many years. So good old friend, meet up, catch up, you update each other, right? What you've been doing with one another in the past. So he proudly told me, Yang Po, I own 4 properties. Should you be very proud when you own 4 properties? No, you should not be very proud. You should be very, very, very proud. Most of us are struggling to even own 1. To own 4, you should be very, very proud. So I said, wow, congratulations, congratulations. Well done, man. Wow, I managed to own 4 property. So being a typical property investor, I asked him another question. I said, how many % return do you get for your property? He says, well, I stay in one of my property and then I rent out the 3. Don't talk about my property. He says, Indonesia as a whole, the returns that you get from the property, the rental is about 5%. Is 5% good? Not bad, huh? Singapore also about that. In fact, globally also about that. I say, wow, pretty good. Then I ask one more question. How many % interest do you pay to the bank? Any wild guesses how many % they pay? Huh? What? What, 20? Well, she go very, very fast, very high. He actually pays 18% to the bank. Now, let's do the maths. When you put in 5% and you take out 18%, do you make money or lose money? Lose. You lose how many %? You lose 13%. But you know, you meet up with good friends, he's so proud he owns 4 property, you don't go and burst his ego, correct or not? You don't go and say, wow, you know, but you're losing money. So I kept quiet. But something I cannot control. My face color changed. And then he noticed the change, you know. He says, but Yang Po, don't worry. Indonesia, our property increased very fast one. Our capital gain very good one. So I said, good. So tell me, 3 years down the road, how many % increase can your property go? He said 3 years, maybe 3 years about 30%. 3 years, 30%, is that good? It's good. In Singapore, sometimes we don't even see that. But let's do the maths, okay? When you lose 13% for 1 property, 3 property, because you rent out 3, right? So for 3 years, how much do you lose? Yeah, 3 years, you actually lose 39%. So even when you have a capital gain of 30%, do you still make money or lose money? Lose. You still lose how much? You still lose 9%. So who says you rent out your property is an asset? In fact, in this case, the more property you own, the more property you lose. The more property you own, the more money you lose. The more property you own, the more liability you have. So it doesn't mean when you rent out it's an asset. But most of us do that, right? We say we buy it because we say, you know, got future gain one, very good. Like the sale, right? Everybody says sale, next to casino, 包价, right? Like durian. That means guarantee, sure win one, sure will have capital gain. How many of you initially also think so? Nobody, only one person. But do you know what happened to the sale last year during the crisis? Everybody was selling the sale. And they are not selling because the price increased. They are selling because of the crisis they cannot afford to hold. So they have to sell it at a loss. That's why the sale property last year actually dropped by 50%. True or true? So who says capital gain only, you will make money? That's the reason why the poor is always poor. Because the poor invest in a future that's unknown. The poor invest in a future praying and hoping that the property will increase. True? But the fact of the matter is it depends on how long you can hold. Because first year, maybe you say no choice, you really choose to invest, right? So you know, tighten your belt also must pay. Second year, get a bit strenuous. Wow, 2 years paying already. You come third year, crisis hit. Your salary got cut by half. Can you continue to sustain minus 13%? No, when you cannot continue to sustain minus 30%, what must you do with the property? Sell. Now when you sell a profit or loss? Loss. That's the reason why the poor is always poor. Because the poor invest in the future praying and hoping that one day it will go out and make big money and make it quick. True or true? But the fact of the matter is we don't know. And that's the reason why the poor is always poor. Now let's see what the rich people do. The poor don't invest the poor invest in capital gain. The rich make sure they have positive cash flow. They make sure every property they invest in can give them positive cash flow because they know when you have positive cash flow money in your pocket, can anybody take it away? No. So when you have 1 year 13% positive, 3 years you make how much? 3 years you make 39. Don't say your property go up. Say the market is so bad. The property not only didn't go up, it went down and went down drastically by 30%. Do you still make money or lose money? Make. You still make how much? You still make 9%. That's the reason why the poor is always poor and the rich is always rich. Because the rich knows that as long as you have cash flow, even when the market goes down, can you hold on to the property? Yes, because who is paying for the property? Yes, your tenant is paying for the property. So as long as your tenant is paying for property, you can hold on to the property. Will property one day, somewhere, someplace, somehow goes up? Yes, it will in a very long term because of inflation. Okay, so property will definitely go up. That's the reason why the rich is always rich and the poor is always poor. Because the rich invest in positive cash flow property, the poor invest in the future gain that's unknown. So the first strategy that you learn here today is this, of what the rich people do. The rich people invest in cash flow. Everybody say? Cash flow. The poor invest in capital gain. How many of you are excited about your learning already? Yeah. How many of you want to learn some more? Okay, good. Since creating cash flow is so important, how many of you want to learn how to create positive cash flow out of your property? Okay, by the way, just for me, for my information, how many of you seated here are already property investor? How many of you are aspiring property investor? Ah, good, thank you. So, the rest of you, wrong room, okay? So, if you want to create positive cash flow, this is what you do, okay? This is the property I invest in, the sale. You know, when I first bought the property, it was already at coming down already. It's 1.3 million. I put 20% deposit, and then the rental was already coming down when it TOP. And the interest is the monthly that you have to pay to the bank, okay, when you take a maximum 80%. And then the less maintenance, less property tax is minus 1,464. Now, when you look at numbers like this, should you invest in a property like this? Wow, very good. Give yourself a big round of applause. You learn very fast, huh? When you look at property like that, you shouldn't invest. Why? Yes, because it's negative cash flow. Because you learn that negative cash flow, you don't invest. So how many of you want to know how I turn this negative to positive cash flow? Yeah. What I did was very, very simple. I simply pick up the phone and call the bank and say, bank, I want to do an interest-only loan. How many of you know what's an interest-only loan? How many of you don't know what's an interest-only loan? Okay, good. Let me explain. An interest-only loan is this. When you go to the bank and say, bank, I want to take up a loan, normally the monthly installment you have to pay back, there are two components. What are the two components? One of them is principal. Very good. What's the other one? Yeah, interest. Okay, so let's take a look at the numbers. Okay, out of the 4,005, let's just round up the numbers. Probably about 2,500 is the principal. Probably about 2,000 is the interest. So what I did is this. I told the bank, I want to do an interest-only loan. In other words, I do not want to pay the principal. And because of that, everything else remained the same. Let's look at the numbers now. With just one strategy, I have moved the numbers from minus 1,400 to 836. With just one phone call, with just one strategy, I managed to change negative 1,400 to positive 800. Is that good or is that good? It's not good. It's very, very good. How much money did I make? Just one strategy, just one phone call. It's not just 800. How much did I make? I make 2,300 a month. 1 year, how much do I make? More than 24,000 with just one strategy, with just one phone call. Is that powerful? Yeah, very powerful. In fact, what I did was this. When I first learned of this strategy, I actually learned it overseas. And I told myself, I say, Singapore, no such thing as interest-only loan, right? No, Singapore is so strict, the government so strict, the bank also so strict. Where on earth got such thing called interest-only? But I told myself, you know, after all, I really learned the strategy. Is there any loss to me to ask the bank? No. What is the worst that the bank can say? Don't know what. That's all right, got nothing to lose, right? So I say, okay, so you know, if you have nothing to lose, go and ask. So I just pick up the phone and say, bank, I want to do an interest-only loan. Guess what the bank say? Yes or no? Yes. And because it's a yes, I was so excited. Because I know when it's a yes, now I'm able to own the sale. And not only that, I can make a lot of money out of the sale. So I was very, very excited. So when I start telling people, people tell me this. But Yang Po, you take interest-only loan, you pay higher interest, no? Is that true? Yeah. If you take an interest-only loan, you pay 2.3%. You take the regular loan, it's approximately about 2%. But I tell people this, you know, by paying 0.3% more, I can make 2,300 a month. Should I pay? Gladly pay. But most of us, we all live in a little tunnel, right? We all live in a little tunnel. Anything must pay more, don't pay, correct? Anything must pay tax, don't pay, correct? But if you pay 1,000 more, can make you 10,000, should you pay? Gladly. Don't just look at the 0.3% more. It can make you a lot more. You should pay. What more? If you turn from negative to positive, who is paying for the extra? Tenant. So if the tenant is paying for the extra, why do you care? True? So gladly pay the 0.3%, you know. So the second strategy that you learn is interest-only loan. How many of you are very, very excited already? How many of you want to learn some more? Okay, good. How many of you say, you know, Yang Po, I want to not only turn from negative to positive, I want to have infinite return of my property. How many of you want to know how? Just to clarify, infinite means unlimited return, okay? How many of you want to have unlimited return of your property? Okay, very good. Let me show you this. Assuming today, okay, when you invest in a property, assuming you invest in a property that's 1 million, how much capital must you put in? Yeah, you have to put in 200,000 because we can take a loan of maximum 80%, right? So therefore, your capital is 200,000. Now, assuming 5 years down the road, no major crisis, no major catastrophe, no unforeseen circumstances, how many of you say 5 years down the road, property will go up? Okay, how many of you say 5 years down the road, property will go down? Okay, majority wins, Assuming 5 years down the road, property goes up. Don't say it goes up a lot. Goes up just 25%. So now your property is worth 1.25 million. 1.25 million, 80% loan is how much? Approximately 1 million. So when you take 1.25 million minus 1 million is how much? Everybody? 250,000. Good. Now this is the part you don't want to wink an eye. Are you ready? Are you ready? Good. When you invest in a property, 200,000, you take out from the property 250,000. Do you have any more capital in a property? One more time. When you put 200,000 in a property, you have taken out 250,000 from the property. Do you have any more capital in the property? No, because you have taken more than you put in, right? So therefore you have no capital. But do you continue to own this property? Yes. Since you continue to own the property, can you continue to rent the property? Yes. So when you have zero capital and you continue to receive rental, any number divided by zero is how many percent? Infinity. Infinite return on your property. Is that good or is that good? Very, very good. That's called capital refinancing. Everybody say? Capital refinancing. Please don't go to the bank and say, bank, can I do refinancing? Because when you go to the bank and say, I want to do refinancing, the bank will say today's interest rate is 2%. True? But that's not what you want. Huh? What you want is capital refinancing. Okay, so once you do this, you have unlimited return. That's the reason why the poor is always poor, the rich is always rich. Okay, so for example, today, what will the poor people do? When your property increased from 1 million to 1.25 million, what do? Sell. When you sell the property, you never see so much profit before, so much money in cash, 250,000 whole in your hand. You get very excited. What do? Spend. You spend because never see so much money. You must spoil yourself, reward yourself, pamper yourself a little bit, right? While you're pampering yourself, property price continue to go up, and you realize what is left. Is it enough to buy another property? No, it's not enough to buy another property. So since it's not enough to buy property, that's the reason why the poor is always poor. But what does the rich people do? The rich, when the property price goes up, they don't sell. What do? They do a capital refinancing. When they do a capital refinancing, what do they do with the money? Buy another one, reinvest another property. That's how the rich build property portfolio. When you build property portfolio, that's how you can become rich. Any wild guesses? How many property does Robert Kiyosaki owns? 1,400, go higher. 1,400, 1,400. Go higher. 2,000, very good. Can we give her a big round of applause? Robert Kiyosaki owns 2,000 property, and how does he do it? Capital refinancing. No need all his 2,000. Just more than 50% of his property has positive cash flow. Can he already start to retire? Yeah, that's why the rich is always rich. So the third strategy that you learn that the rich people do is this. Capital refinancing. Okay, let me just share with you some of the testimonies of what the people has done. Okay, Cecilia in Indonesia, after she learned one of my strategies, she says, I used to own 6 properties, but all at negative cash flow. Ever since I learned from you the importance of creating assets that gives me positive cash flow, I managed to turn my negative cash flow asset to positive. I used to feel trapped and frustrated because of the negative cash flow. Now, I feel so free, relieved, and powerful. Thanks, Yang Po, for changing my life in just 3 months. 3 months, she managed to change her property from negative to positive. Is that good or is that good? Good. So another one, Willie, he says the property investment strategy program was great because all the strategies are realistic and useful. After a while, when you know me, you'll know that things that I teach, things that I share are things that are very practical, things that you can use, and things that you can share.